Hey guys, Matt here. I thought today we would go and talk about something that I get asked about a lot on the channel, and that is first aid and sort of how I go about my first aid setup when I'm out backpacking with my dog. Here I have my full comprehensive first aid kit. I never really pare it down. This is the same first aid kit I carry on every single trip. The only thing that ever really kind of fluctuates with my first aid kit is the meds inside. So I thought we would kind of tear it down and talk a little bit about what I carry in my first aid kit, why I carry certain things in my first aid kit. If you guys have not already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps out a ton. If you're into any kind of backpacking and hiking related content and getting weight off your back, getting a little bit more ultralight, making life more comfortable out on trail, that's what my videos are all about. That's what my channel is all about. So like I said, consider subscribing to the channel. And with that out of the way, let's dive into the first aid kit. Now, all in all, the total weight of my first aid kit is 6 5/8 of an ounce or 187 grams. I'm not going to take the time to weigh every single little piece of gear and knick-knack. That just would take me far too long, and I'm sure nobody's interested in knowing the weight of the zip tie that's in. But the total weights, as I said, 6 5/8 of an ounce or 187 grams. Now let's dive in and see what we carry inside this thing. The first thing I want to point out is I carry all of my first aid supplies in a medium-sized Ziploc freezer bag. The reason I carry it in a Ziploc freezer bag is they're just a little bit more tough and robust, and they're going to hold up a little bit more to, being thrown in a pack and dropped on the ground and constantly opened and closed and whatnot. And the other primary reason I use a Ziploc freezer bag is it's see-through. So I can see the contents of my first aid kit. I know exactly where every single thing is that's inside here. So I don't have to go hunting around and looking for it. That really helps if you have to bust out your first aid kit in the middle of the night and you're working in the dark. You've got your headlamp on, you just look and you can see where everything is, and you're not going fishing through, say a red bag like a lot of first aid kits are. Now opening it up and diving inside, the first thing we're going to pull out is a zip tie. Now there are a million and one uses for having a zip tie or two with you in your backpacking gear loadout. I usually have 3 with me actually, and this just goes to show that I actually have not gone and restocked my first aid kit from my last backpacking trip when I lent out 2 zip ties to a friend who had a buckle failure on their pack. So I carry a couple zip ties in my bag. Next thing you're going to find digging down is a couple gauze pads, just a couple different size gauze pads. You never know when they're going to come in handy. Not something that I use all that often, but it's just one of those things that gives me peace of mind, especially when I've got Wanda with me out on our backpacking trips. There's always a potential for her to, tear a paw pad or get a cut in a paw pad, that kind of thing. So I always make sure I've got some gauze and other supplies to kind of help manage any of her potential injuries as well as my own. That's primarily why I carry the gauze pads. And to go with the gauze pads, I carry a little roll of medical tape. I also carry this little plastic tube container. This is to keep a couple pieces of my gear safe, and it's not gear that's inside this tube. It's actually to keep the gear in my bag safe from what's in this tube. I have a pair of very, very sharp needle point tweezers. Now, cannot overstate how useful having a safety pin or two is. I've got a large one and a smaller one in this tube here, and they just keep in this little solid plastic tube just for helping keep the rest of my gear safe from the potential to get poked and torn up from the little sharp edges on here. I also carry a small little Ziploc bag inside the first aid kit that keeps all my bandages and little ointment wipes and that kind of stuff. Got some little alcohol sanitary wipes just for cleaning off any wounds if I have to dress a wound. I also have these little blister and burn packages here. It's just like a little gel. Say you're working around the fire and you end up burning yourself on your spork or burn yourself on a coal or something like that. Put this little anti-burn stuff on there. It helps a lot. I have used these in the past. They work fantastic. Carry a couple packs of this skin tack stuff here. This is just a little gel that makes your skin tackier. So if you're going to put medical tape on, it just helps it stick a lot better. I found in any sort of like wet, humid environment, like up here in the Rockies, it tends to get pretty humid. And a lot of times Band-Aids and medical tape don't stick all that well to your skin and you start sweating. This stuff just helps it stick that much more. And I don't really have an issue with anything peeling off of me. I also carry Afterbite. Up here in the Rockies, mosquitoes and horseflies and those kind of things that bite are a major issue during the prime hiking season. So having a little bit of Afterbite to help, treat any kind of insect bites is pretty key. I carry a couple of those in there as well. I also carry some assorted Band-Aids in here, just different sizes, and I use specifically the Band-Aid brand. Last thing in my little tiny bag of Band-Aids and other supplies is some steri strips or butterfly bandages. I have used these in the past when I got a pretty nasty gash on my leg in the middle of the backcountry, and I used some steri strips and just kind of, you know, butterflied it together, and I was able to complete my hike, and it actually helped me avoid getting probably 4 stitches on my leg at one point. So, you know, having some steri strips and knowing how to use stuff like this as well. Another Wanda related item, I carry a roll of vet wrap. Just if you hike with pets, I cannot stress enough, you probably want to carry a roll or 2 of vet wrap with you. This stuff is fantastic. It's a great little medical adhesive. It doesn't stick to their fur, so you're not going to rip chunks of their fur out, you know, like you would with using regular medical tape. It works really well. It holds up really well. You can also reuse it. So, you know, if you've got a cut paw pad, you know, you cover it with gauze, you wrap this over top. As long as it's not torn up and just completely tattered, you can peel this stuff off and then reuse it the next day, which is really awesome. I carry a tube of polysporin with me. Yes, I could probably carry a smaller tube, but like everything in my first aid kit, I'm kind of carrying more than I really need to, or than most people think I would need to, primarily because I hike with my dog Wanda. I carry polysporin because, you know, I can put this on a wound that she has as well as a wound that I have. This next one's probably going to surprise a bunch of people because I doubt very many people carry one of these in their first aid kit, especially a dude. I carry a tampon with me. This is just one of those little tips that I got from my mom, an ER nurse, for you know, just a fantastic little thing that is ultra absorbent. Now, I'm sure the ladies out there will agree with me. Yes, they are very absorbent, and that is primarily the reason why. This little baggie here, this is my pills and medication bag. Yeah, I'm sure carrying it in a bag is going to drive some people nuts, but I don't really carry a ton of stuff in here. I carry stuff that I know I'm potentially going to need when I'm out there in the backcountry. I carry a couple Advil 400s, I carry some Tums, I carry a couple Tylenol, I carry some Benadryl. Primarily for Wanda, Benadryl is just one of those medications that you can give to a dog if she bites a bee and, you know, starts having an allergic reaction, her mouth starts swelling up. I can give her some Benadryl, as well as bug bites and that kind of stuff. I can hook her up with that and help get her taken care of. These may be controversial to some people, but I carry a couple really small tubes of crazy glue with me. It's just one of those things. I know it's probably controversial to think of, you know, fixing up a little gash with crazy glue. As I mentioned before, using the butterfly bandages to fix up a gash I had on my leg a couple years ago, I also crazy glued that cut shut. I probably should have prefaced this whole video by saying that I'm not a medical expert. I'm sure me going over these first aid supplies is pretty apparent that I'm not a medical expert, and I'm not suggesting anybody go and, you know, glue their leg shut with crazy glue. But I'm not going to shy away and say that I've never done it before, and it worked for me, so I just carry crazy glue. This can also be used for gear repair as well. So, you know, a little bit of dual purpose stuff in my first aid kit. These little tiny tubes are super handy. Rolling off of that and keeping with gear repair, I keep some Gear Aid tenacious tape. This is just the clear stuff. This tape is fantastic for patching holes in a puffy jacket or a sleeping bag or a quilt, or, you know, you got a hole in your backpack or whatever. Tenacious tape is just awesome stuff. I think everybody out backpacking should have a little bit of tenacious tape with them. It has saved me a bunch of times. You know, when I got a freaking hole in my awesome UGQ banded top quilt, I was able to patch it together and not lose all the down out of my quilt with some tenacious tape. An item I preach about carrying a bunch of, and I always say I have one in my first aid kit, and I always carry a pink one in my first aid kit, primarily because, you know, the pink is just really easy to see through the first aid kit, so I always know where it is. But I always carry an extra Bic mini lighter with me. I carry an extra smart water bottle cap with me. Just, you know, the caps are ridiculously small. I've seen people drop their bottle and crack the lid before. And I've never wanted to be in that situation where I, you know, was worried about spilling my water carrying it down the trail. So I just throw an extra cap in the first aid kit. Doesn't really, you know, kill me at all weight-wise. I've actually lent a bunch of these out and given a bunch of these out to people over the years that have, you know, broken a cap or lost their cap. They set it down to fill up their water bottle and just misplaced the cap on a rock and you can't find it. Don't worry, Matty's got an extra one for you. Now, I have watched a bunch of different first aid videos in the past, and I honestly don't recall ever seeing anybody sort of in the ultralight or lightweight hiking community talking about bringing nitrile gloves with them out in the backcountry. But just, you know, maybe it's me being Canadian and, you know, we are always kind of looking to help each other out and do that kind of thing. Not everything in my first aid kit is just strictly for me. You know, I have gear to help patch up my dog and, you know, to potentially help, you know, patch up another person if I come across an injured hiker on the trail. And I just will always carry a pair of nitrile gloves with me just to, you know, give me a little bit of a barrier for if I'm, you know, having to bandage up somebody's leg or whatever. I don't want to get somebody else's blood on me and put myself in that kind of situation. So a little lightweight pair of nitrile gloves is always at the very, very bottom of my first aid kit. Now that I've got everything loaded back up in here, I'm actually glad I shot this video because it showed me that there was a couple things I needed to restock in here, primarily in my little, meds bag. I had to restock a couple Advil and a couple Tums. So I got that done. We are all loaded and ready to go for our next backpacking trip. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video and you guys are looking at, ways to make your life a little bit more comfortable for you out on trail and maybe shave some weight off your back for your next backpacking trip, I've got an entire playlist on weight-saving backpacking tips that I'll fire right here for you. So when you're done with this video, find a video in that playlist. You'll probably find something in there for yourself. And as always, guys, I am Matty. Thank you so dang much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.